Hi, this is Paul Rao with Technically Speaking at Source Allies. Today we're going to talk about maybe not the most exciting methods on the web, but we're going to talk about Console.Log. So the console object, which is a global available in any browser, Node.js, Bun, server runtimes, all the server runtimes too, is a type. I have it pulled up here that has a whole bunch of methods on it. Methods that people don't probably think of that often. So I just wanted to go through and kind of explore some of these methods because some of them are pretty handy. So let's just play around with them a little bit here. So the first group of methods is the various logs. So for example, Console.Log, most common, just prints out whatever you pass into it. Now, if you want to have different loggles, most of us are used to backend logging libraries where you can do like info, warn, error, etc. And these actually exist on console as well. So for example, if I want to just provide some informational, I can actually run hello console.info, and that'll show as informational. And I can filter those up here in the various log level filters up here. I can also use warn, which is sometimes used. See, that shows just a little differently. And then there's trace and error, which are kind of interesting because they actually show stack traces. So you can see here that this came from the console, but if I had actual source code, it would show a trace. And then error actually dumps out an error if you pass in an error object. So instead of just using console.log for everything, you can use these other console methods. In fact, it'd be really interesting to have a logging library actually intercept these methods so you didn't have to import logging libraries and you learn a different API, but you could just use native APIs and then have those logs forwarded on to a logging server. So what if we have a more complicated object to display? Maybe we have like an array of objects like I have here with fruits. Well, in that case, we actually have another method on the console object called console.table. Console.table takes an array of objects and then an array of property names on those objects, and it'll actually create this really nice table here that is kind of navigable with in the browser and formatted really nicely with those columns in it. So this is really handy if you have an array of like objects maybe coming back from a API call or something and you want to log them out. Another thing we can do is group information. So let's say we wanted to display a bunch of this fruit color information here. We could actually do a log like fruits, and then we could call console.group. Now what console.group does is it takes all the additional console logging lines and it indents them one level in. And you could just concatenate like a tab on the front of everything. But this is nice if you want to print things out in a bunch of different methods and kind of follow a call hierarchy, especially if you're doing something like recursion and you want to log different levels of the recursion. So for example, if I just log out all my fruits here, you'll see that it actually indents, and because I'm using this console.group, I can actually like expand and collapse the groups here in the terminal. So each group indents one line, then you log, and then group end goes kind of up a level, if you will. And then we'll end back to the main group. All right. So sometimes in a front-end application, certain things might be happening, and we want to kind of track how often they happened and log every time they happen in a count. So for that, there's actually a console.count. So for example, if we use console.count foo, that's just going to print out foo 1 because we've called it once. If I call it again, it's going to print out 2. And if I call it again, 3, 4, 5, etc. But it doesn't require me to keep a counter anywhere. It internally is keeping a counter bound to that foo label. I can reset the count by calling count reset. And then now if I log count again, I go back to 1. So this is handy if you have something where maybe you're looping over some work, or you just want to track, the number of times something was clicked, or the number of times some event occurred, or an error was thrown, or something like that. So finally, let's talk about timing. Now there is an entire performance metrics API both in the browser that can be used to drive the timeline here, but also in Node.js they actually have performance counters as well. But if we want something a little bit more poor man, simple, for kind of a quick and dirty timing, we can actually use console.time. So let me just whip up a little method here that will just delay execution for a while. And then let's look at like a process method. So this method here, process, we're just going to call console.time processing. So that's going to start our timer. And then I just have a loop here that just loops over 5 times and just calls wait and just waits 1 second each time. And then it calls console.time.log. So what time.log does is it just prints out a progress for how long the timer's been going. And then time.end ends the timer and also prints it. So if I were to go ahead and call this function, process, you'll see I get processing, 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 and then it's done. So this is handy if you wanted to maybe just, quickly time. A good example of this would be maybe you get to make an API call, you get back a list of items, and then you sort those items before you display them to a user. Sometimes sorting large lists of items in the browser can be kind of slow, especially if that sort requires a bunch of comparisons. So you could use timer to say start a timer, sort the list, and then do time end just to get a really quick metric of how long it takes to sort that list in the log. So that's kind of just an overview of some console methods that are maybe not as well known, not used every day. They're not going to save your next project, but they could be really handy for debugging and troubleshooting things here and there without having to pull in any third-party libraries. This has been Paul Rao with Technically Speaking at Source Allies. Do you have a topic you want to see covered? Comment it down below. Check out sourceallies.com to learn more about us. And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.